I'm going to share some of the experience I've had working in groups, in organizations of different sizes, as well as a little bit of the research that we know of. But I'm hoping this will be a conversation, because what I've noticed over the past year or so, and as I said, over the 9 months specifically, where organizations really looking into how to create this hybrid, this new paradigm, this new work paradigm, the paradigm is changing. We don't know exactly where we are going to land. And the experience I've observed across different countries has been very, very different, even within the same organization. And that's one of the things that I wanted to bring your attention to, in terms of why group coaching might be a really good way to have those meaningful conversations in organizations. So let me just share my screen with you. First aspect are people. So sense of belonging, psychological safety, and we know psychological safety, some of the ingredients that we have for psychological safety is about learning, is about recognizing fallibility. So I get things right, especially from the leadership perspective. So leaders recognizing that they get things wrong, and that becomes something that's okay. So people feel safe to talk and share. And for hybrid work, there is a level of trust that is required, and sometimes that trust is already there, but sometimes we need to work on it, and also a sense of curiosity. What is this new paradigm of work is going to be? We really don't know, depending on the organization and where they're heading. That we will have different, multiple ways of working. It won't be one solution. It will be myriad solutions. And large organizations across the globe, as I said, they will have potential local solutions for their new way of working. There's something about expectations and reliability that it goes back to the trust. So teams and people across the organization knowing they can rely on one another, that they when plans are put in motion, that will be done. And there is something about really important about equity. How do I know if we have a hybrid working culture, and if I am at home or perhaps in another country, how do I know that I'll be treated equally, that I will have the sense of equity when everybody else might be in the office, or half of us might be in the office, the other half might be in a different country. So so that sense of equity is really important, and that needs to be thought through by the leadership of the organization and the local leadership, and we'll be talking about what that means. So creating the culture that we want to create for the hybrid work, we'll be talking about values, and there is something that we know is being on the agenda quite a lot recently, which is the well-being of the people we're working with. So well-being being really, really important for everyone in the organization, and the pandemic not only through everything in terms of the paradigm of work, but it really highlighted the importance of well-being. So we know the research shows that organizations are thinking a lot more about the well-being of their people, and experiences have been very mixed. Of course, for some people, the pandemic has had an adverse impact, and for others, it had a positive impact. And there is no one size fits all. And that is another discussion in terms of hybrid work, people wanting different things because they've got different needs and so on. So how do we square their peg really in terms of the needs of the people, the needs of the team, and the needs of the organization? So this is one big bundle, is people. The second one is processes and tools. So what kind of processes we need to put in place to make sure that this new paradigm works, whatever paradigm that we're creating for ourselves in our organizations, and what kind of tools. So for some of us in the school, perhaps old enough to remember, we had remote working before, the matrix organizations in the 80s, where people were using the teleconference. We didn't have Zoom, we didn't have this, we didn't have PowerPoints. We would be carrying out work remotely, very, very different without all the tools that we have. We have platforms now to share things across instantly, and so on. The technology has moved on a lot, and how then we decide to use that technology is a consideration, and is a consideration of what we're creating for our teams. How do we want to work together and use the technology to create the culture we want, as well as the results? So we've got collaboration, we've got communication, we've got project management, which is, you know, the implementation of the work itself, and in there we're negotiating the kind of the human aspect of it. So how do we work as a team, and how do we use those processes and tools to work better as a team? And sometimes there is a space there to recognize what the needs are of individuals in that team as well. And technology is good for that, because it allows some sort of flexibility in those processes, and some of the tools are flexible as well. And how do you use those tools to create a sense of connection? So linking back to their sense of belonging and people working together. There's a sense of cohesion in organizations. And then there is the place where people work. So either, you know, there are teams which are now completely remote, and they might be in the same geography, but by that I mean the same country, or even local, but they are working remotely. We have the hybrid teams, that mixture of remote and in the office. We have office teams, although those are you know, not the majority anymore in many industries. In others, they're still they're still the only way, because the work, the industry demands that. Something about offshore oil safety people, they are there, they haven't left the platform, they're still there, looking after the health and safety and the risk for their organization. And there is a sense of geographic diversity. So some organizations have experienced people moving. Actually, I'm working with people now who used to be based in the UK, and they've moved. You know, during the pandemic, they decided they could. You know, right? That the tools were there, and it was possible to do that, and there was that. But also, there are organizations which are, you know, multi, reach a global spectrum. So they have people working in different countries, and teams working in different countries. And it might be that the team itself is spread geographically, and that poses some of the challenges. I was saying to you before, I was running a group last week, and we have this person who is in Egypt, and there is a challenge there in terms of the technology that doesn't work quite well, and you know, the organization is trying, and that's having an impact. And you would think sometimes we take technology for granted. Not the beginning of this presentation, obviously, because I go into trouble, but that can be a big thing for people, really, and it can be a barrier. So that is the world of work as we have it, evolving. And it's, as I said, we don't know where exactly we will be landing, and some organizations are having conversations, and I will hear from you very shortly. My experience is that the organizations who are making decisions on behalf of their people, and they are telling the people what they are supposed to do, or what the expectations are. So organizations saying to people, from a particular date, you will be coming back to the office at least 3 times a week, and that's what's going to happen. There are other organizations trying to engage in a more with participation, engaging employees and asking them, and having those conversations. And there are organizations which are having a kind of a head office flexible position, and letting their local offices decide what is best for their locality. And that is one, you know, when conversations can be very helpful, when you bring people together from different locations and see what they're doing, when they're doing things differently. They have different ideas, they have different cultures, and that exchange is quite an interesting one to have, which is beyond the teams and the localities that you may be used to working with. So I've just this is a teams. Oopsie, it's gone ahead. This is a teams of teams. So it's a concept that was created by Bursing some years ago. So whereas before we could think about organizations as being divided perhaps by function. So you've got, you've got production, you've got marketing, you've got sales. What has been happening over the past few years, well, decades, I would say, is that we have a way of working where people with different expertise, they go and they lead programs and projects. So it becomes a teams of teams. So there is a tendency of, you see this matrix, but not the matrix organizations that we used to have in the 80s, but where people are congregating around what is it that they want to deliver. So not necessarily divided by function. And that could also be across geography. Even smaller organizations are delivering in collaboration and partnerships. So they're working with other organizations. And that's creating that sense of that is spread across. And again, how do we keep everything going? And that sense that we're working together in this really different way of working. So this is the world of organizations, a little bit of my kind of anecdotal experience of working, over the past few months. And I now would like to share with you some of the research and the evidence of impact of group coaching, because you would say, I'm completely biased. I do think group coaching is really a good tool. And I do the research and I work in groups, so I will be biased, but I will give you some evidence as well. There is a nascent literature in group coaching, so you find a lot more around teams, not so much around groups, but that is growing. So there is a direction there. It really feels that's moving and that's being taken up a lot more. So hopefully we see even more evidence. But what we do know with the research we have is that group coaching helps people with a sense of belonging, erase their self-awareness. So there is some literature around group coaching for leadership, and that self-awareness comes from that. Confidence, self-esteem, better well-being, shared narratives, so people sharing stories and that becoming very transformational for people in organizations where, the stories are being told and shared and changed together. There is something around reduced stress and new perspectives. And when we look at that, I mean, those are some of the ones that I've chosen to share because they are really linked with some of the challenges that organizations are having at the moment as they negotiate the new a new paradigm for the world of work. And some of the reasons why this evidence is there is people sharing, working together from across. So just a little bit of in terms of definitions and the differences between group coaching and team coaching. So whereas in a team, we're working with a team, so it's an existing dynamic there. The team is there for they want to achieve a particular goal, and they then liaise with a coach or their organizational development department, whatever that might be, and they work together as a team. So there is an existing dynamic there, and they have a clarity. Well, hopefully, not always. Hopefully, they will have a clarity of goals and a clarity of intention of the work they're going to be doing together. When we're talking about groups, people get together, they congregate together potentially around a topic. So whether that is hybrid working, that could be leadership, that could be well-being, that could be inclusion. And what happens then is people across an organization, they will get together for a number of sessions to work on that topic. And of course, being from across the organization, they will bring very different experiences. So whereas in a team setting, that experience might be different for individuals in that. However, there is that shared experience of the team itself that is common to all of the people there. So by bringing, what group coaching does is that it brings people from different parts of the organization So there is a richness there in terms of the experience. There's a diversity of experience, ideas, and so on. And that makes all of that really a rich ground for development, and or development not only of the individuals in there, but going across silos and across cultures. So that is one of the, I think, is really powerful for group coaching. So the experience for individuals in group coaching, what we see is that some of the things that they say as a result of being part of those group experiences, that they raise their self-awareness through working with others. So it's very different from a dyadic one-to-one coaching approach where you raise self-awareness, but there's a dialogue there. But actually observing yourself within the group is also very conducive to raising self-awareness and raising, your understanding of your own position and how you are and the impact you have. So whereas in a dyadic situation, you will be bringing up different ideas. In groups, you've got that is multiplied by the number of people who are there, and they are bringing that from their very personal, professional lens, very specific to their own experience. There's something about role modeling. So some of the research and some of the work that we do, by the end of the group coaching engagement, people are almost talking to each other, engaging in that inquiry, asking, coach-like questions and being curious, and all of the things that we value in a coaching engagement, really. So people understand that by working together, and some sort of tolerance and understanding of others' views. So one of the things, and I'll share some of the quotes I've had, is that people saying, "Oh, I never knew this particular person would feel this way because I've heard of it," but actually, when you talk to people, so when you read reports. When you read about the experience of others in your own organization, what's going on, that is a very, it's very good, it's information. But when you hear from that particular person or from that particular point of view, from the person, the people themselves, that takes a completely different different impact. You begin to understand them a lot more than you did than only using your kind of intellect and your rational side to read something. There is something about collective accountability. So groups then deciding to help each other because they realize they have the expertise or the exchange, and really seeing themselves as a catalyst of change and galvanizing. Supportive environment, of course, we're talking about hopefully groups that are functioning really well. So there is that supportive environment where people exchange, and it becomes the learning community. So people really reaching out to each other outside the group and outside that work to continue sometimes those conversations and to continue sharing their experience. And in terms of the organization, there is something that, again, I think is very specific and rich to groups that is beyond some of the other types of interventions. And of course, I'm not saying that group coaching is the only intervention that we need. We need an approach that is collective and that's well thought through and so on, but group coaching being one of the interventions. And some of the key things that you see on the screen there is it encourages learning across teams because you're working across teams. So that learning is shared. So if you think about a one-to-one coaching, there might be learning there might be shared, then cascaded down to the organization and so on, or might be even cascaded across. But there is a ripple impact, right? So if I have a group of 8 people and they are leading teams of 20 people, so the impact will be 160 people if I did my maths right. If I didn't, but anyway, there is that impact. It's exponential. Can be explanation for the organization. Is very good for supporting culture change because it is operating outside the silos that might be going on and is breaking those, not breaking, but is expanding the boundaries of the conversation. So in terms of culture change, which is something, as we know, can take time, it can be slow, is sometimes it's really difficult to kind of plan for, but you plant those seeds in those groups, and then there is that ripple impact across the organization. There is something about connection that fosters connection in a very, again, outside teams, but people connecting with each other. Self and collective awareness normalizes experiences and challenges. So although we know, I mean, there is a sense intellectually that people think, well, people are going through similar challenges and people talk about those challenges. Actually, when you get into a group and people talk about, this is what happened in my department here, and you get a bunch of people together to think through, and then it was thinking, phew, I'm so glad to hear that you're also having this problem, and can we see what the different options might be. Now I'm going to stop sharing, and I would like, we will be doing some work together, but I wonder if you've got any questions or any comments or anything that is coming up for you as we go through some of these ideas.
Hi, Sarah from São Paulo, Brazil. Thank you for your presentation. I understood that these working groups is very important and there are a lot of benefits. I would like to understand if you have a special methodology for it.
That's a great question. No. Well, yes and no, but let's just unpack it a little bit. So when we think about, one of the challenges of this, the research around group coaching is the fact that there are, as researchers, we haven't really agreed on a definition of what group coaching is, and it tends to be bundled together with teams, and I get rather precious about it, because there is a massive difference. If you work with your team, is a team of people who work together every day, they know each other, is a very different proposition than getting people from across the globe, perhaps for an international organization, and put them together to do that work. And we use coaching tools, and I would say that the coaching approach that you decide to use with teams, can be, with groups, can be quite similar to the approach that you might have with one-to-one. So for example, if you work with narrative coaching or transformational coaching, you can then definitely transpose that into a group situation. And in saying that, I do think that the key thing about working in groups is really leveraging the group, what is already in the group. So there is a little bit more, perhaps more complex. So there isn't a methodology per se. Some people have used different models. That is the best way to describe it. Did that answer your question? If it didn't, just...
Yes. I understood. The vision is treat a group like one person.
You can use the same approach, and it would the dynamic will be different. So what we observe in groups is that, for example, you might not be having a one-to-one conversation with each individual in the group, but you observe that a topic is raised by someone and other people engage in that topic, and the energy of the group might move from one place to another according to the conversation that's being had, and the thing is, you have a topic. So what puts those people together is the topic they're discussing, and each individual may have their own different goal to be there. So I'll give you an example of the group that I was telling you about, that I was working last week. So people from different countries, from all the different continents there, from an international organization. The group was about hybrid working, and they were getting together. Each of those individuals had a very different experience in their locality of hybrid working, and culturally very different. So some of them recognizing in their employees, they had different ideas and perhaps fears or concerns about hybrid working. They were very different from the people in other countries, for example. And that discussion is really rich. So they each bring their own experience, and by discussing what hybrid working might be, discussing those different topics that I showed it to you with the first slide, with people, tools and processes, and the locality, they will be able to surface different ideas and different ways of thinking and generating those perspectives that we find in group coaching that is so rich that actually I would not know if I wasn't talking to someone in Singapore, and perhaps or someone else who is based in Australia and has a completely different experience that I'm having in the UK. And that is what makes it very, very rich. So it is different to one-to-one. It may be a little bit more complex, and yet I find the experience very rich and very, very helpful.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments before I will ask you to perhaps do, I will send you to breakout rooms, perhaps to do a little bit of reflection of the challenges that you're seeing again in your own space, your clients, what challenges are your clients experiencing, and how you might see group coaching as a potential intervention. But before I do that, any questions, anything that, or any challenges indeed, perhaps you just, Neil.
Hi, I've got a question. I can understand with team coaching, a team, because they work together, may come up with their own topic. And so as you come in and you want them to raise their topic that they want to talk about, and it's common to all, which is what we do with individuals as well. It's the client agenda. How do you create an agenda with a group if they're coming from different ideas, maybe different topics? The context I'm thinking of, on this Saturday, I'm going to do a group coaching with 6 teachers who are some way involved in mentoring in their schools, in mentoring programs in their schools. But I don't know what's on their heart. So how in a session, that the practical question of me is, how do we come up with the agenda for the meeting for that day? Do I send them something beforehand? Do I make suggestions? Do I do it?
Well, what is the program for? What are you being asked to do?
It's a mentoring program. It's they're all in their schools somehow involved in some type of mentoring program within their schools, but they're from 6 different schools.
What is your briefing, Neil? What is your briefing for you?
For me, I'm giving them. My agenda is to give them a space that they can reflect together on the challenges that they have in their schools, in their individuals' situations, that they can share with each other and maybe encourage each other, or maybe see that they've got the same problems, or maybe somebody has a solution. So that's what I'd plan to do.
Yeah, well, it sounds exactly. So one of the difference when you think about facilitation or perhaps action learning sets and other types of group work that you may encounter in our profession is that the group coaching will be focusing on those conversations as opposed to having a very structured agenda. If you were running a workshop, for example, you might be sharing some learning and then asking questions afterwards. With the group, you let the group lead the work. Do you have just one session? Do you have more than one?
We're going to do 6.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that is the usual. I would say use the first session for them to design their program. What is it that they need? And get them thinking about it. So the group, what brings the group together is this theme, mentoring in schools. So we're here together because we're all going to set up a mentoring scheme in our own schools, and we're here to learn together and learn from each other. And I would ask, that's how I would run. I would get them to decide how they're going to, what are the things that they need. But that is one suggestion. Others may have different suggestions, but I would go that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Ali, and good luck on Saturday. Sounds really exciting work. Ali.
Neil's, your example just made me think, and just reinforcing the fact that we don't really have any agreed definitions around group coaching. And so there's another sort of approach, I suppose, which is where people get their individual coaching time in a group setting with a facilitator, someone like yourself, Neil, kind of facilitating the coaching process, which is probably the model I tend to use, where, after a bit of check-in, some people might say, well, I've got this issue I wouldn't mind a bit of help with. And we kind of have time each and then involve the other group members, as you were saying, Anna, in sharing experiences, perspectives themselves. Yeah, so using that.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to action learning set. That we do that way.
There's some similarity, it seems, as well, in what I'm reading about supervision and group supervision and approaches that will be used in the time that's spent within the session. And could be individual or taking one topic that everybody decides, let's go with this. But I like your approach there, Anna, of using the first time to actually allow them to come up with their ideas of where it is they want to go over the 6. It's my first time that I'm doing a group. And I thought I'll experiment.
Let them do it. One of the things about group coaching is let go of.
Yeah, I'm doing it for free for them, but I actually convinced the publisher to pay me for my time. So.
I think I can be quite fussy, if you like. I know we don't have agreed definitions, but I think that group coaching is when you leverage the group.
Yeah.
I think the action learning set or individual in the group is individual coaching in the presence of others. The group comes alive when the group it becomes an entity in itself, and you can see it working. Is a fascinating work, and people are then engaging. And of course, as you develop, if you're developing things over a number of weeks, people get to know each other. And then you see that growth, and if it's working really well, you do very little. You're holding that space, and it's fascinating. But I'm completely biased, as I said. I'm really, really excited about that type of work. Fatima.
Yes. Good night. I will ask you do you promote peer coaching also, or it is something that you promote from the beginning? How the two concepts can combine for you in the best way?
Peer coaching
in the group, using
peer coaching.
Like that accountability that after we have the moments that we are as a coaches with the group. But also we can promote that them between them, like in pairs, really can follow that work.
Yes, it can do that as by design when we're thinking about the needs of the organization and you're putting together a potential plan. And you might think, well, we have the group and then perhaps we can encourage some peer coaching afterwards, which would work really well for the teachers, I would think. Or that could emerge from the work that they're doing together. Okay. So we know, for example, there is a piece of research that was done in women in leadership that after the work that they've set up their own networks, they decided that they enjoyed it so much that they would go and do more of it. But it was more of a spontaneous decision than planned by design. And I guess it depends on the organization and what the organization would want to get out of the coaching program and the interventions and so on. And also there is always an opportunity for mentoring, I suspect, as well. Okay, well, so what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and I'd like to know what are the challenges that you are facing and your clients are facing in relation to hybrid work, if that's the topic that brought you here today, and how might different approaches to coaching support those challenges, and see how we collectively can potentially brainstorm some ideas that useful for all of us. And I'm really excited because we've got people here from a lot of people from all over the world, and it's the same principle, right? Because you have your experience will be different from people based in other places and in different sizes organizations as well. That has an impact, the size of the organization and what kind of leadership the organization has, and how they are developing. That's fine, Simona. So let me just, if I give you 12 minutes, so it's not too long, but long enough that you can have a meaningful conversation. And I will see you very, very shortly.
We got involved with just discussing group coaching, and we had Neil in the group, so we kind of continued the conversation there.
You're sorting him out, so he's ready for Saturday.
Sharing practice.
Yes, brilliant.
That's good.
Do you feel ready now?
Come up with challenges around hybrid work.
Yeah.
That's all right. But in saying that, I'm just aware of the need for learning in teams and groups at the moment. Just the extra, it's a bit like the leadership development needs have just suddenly gone like that. So hugely useful to be learning together in a group setting. Yeah. I think because everyone is having to just navigate this territory at the moment. So I think a really good experience for people. The group coaching is a bit of a navigation, no right answers sort of flavour as well, which I think is really helpful for leaders at the moment. I think other people too have these challenges, not just me, that sort of thing. Yeah.
And not knowing the answers, because in some organizations they don't know where they're going to land as a new paradigm they're creating. So
with and we mentioned as well, team coaching is the sexy thing at the moment. And I'm just aware, I can see completely a need for it. I mean, coaching an individual that's in a team, but then not having the rest of the team in the room can be frustrating as well. But the CEO, who's his team? Is it the C-suite, or is it, if they've got other CEOs in other companies that may be connected, they make a group. They're not a team, they make a group, and they have a need. And they can benefit from the sharing. And so I get really excited about the idea of group, and also something of the discovering what it is that they're going to discover, which is common between them, that's going to help each other. It's kind of like, what's going to happen there. It's like a surprise.
Yes,
I think Emmanuel had a question as well.
Yeah. Emmanuel, coming.
Not just really a question. I think, Nelly, you have really hit the point. The point is group coaching can be interesting, particularly when it is internal and the team is in place. But I think there is a lot of challenge when it has to be hybrid, and particularly people are coming from different backgrounds and different geographies, particularly with the context of the world today. So it brings in a lot of challenges, and so I think that is a bit a challenge. But in any case, there are still a lot of prospects. Looking at your presentation you made, there are a lot of benefits. So I think, but the challenge is the coach to be on board of those challenges and be able to connect, and therefore you'll be able to get there. So I think it is an area that is good to delve into and prospect, because I think there are a lot of things to gain. And of course, I always talk about that the world is facing these disruptions, and not only disruptions in terms of pandemic, disruptions almost in every context of life today. So there is no how we will get back to what the world used to be before. So hybrid has come to stay. So we need to adapt with the challenges of the time and be on board to be able to offer help to the world.
Yeah, and I thank you for that, Emmanuel. And I think that whereas when at the beginning of the pandemic and we moved to online and to online work, and there is still a discussion around, is it better, or what is it? It's different. We know that it's different to be working here now. However, that is also an opportunity, because when we think about working across different geography, it works well virtually. The work that I'm doing currently, the organization will not, I don't think they would clear someone to fly across the world for a 2-hour meeting. So the virtual works, and I think because we're getting more conversant, not me, of course, you've witnessed, despite being working here for 2 years, still getting the slides wrong, but the world is more conversant with any work. So I think the opportunity is there to kind of leverage that as well, and leverage the knowledge that we have across across different parts of the business, really, that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Any challenges? Perhaps some of you not quite liking the idea, or I don't know.
I think we really focus on the opportunities, not so much on the challenges, mainly because probably some of us hadn't used it in organizations, now only with small groups and other kinds of work. And we saw opportunities and also as complementary of other kinds of work that we can also do in the companies. And some examples arise, and like a complement for a facilitation, complement for also for a mentor program, and have this kind of group coaching with the mentor. So we focus on the opportunities. What are we seeing that can really be an opportunity on using group coaching?
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you very much to Antonio, Anna, and Cecilia.
Thank you. Anne?
Yes, I don't know if it's a challenge, but I'm working with a lot of companies, medium-sized and corporations, and more team coaching. But I'm seeing in the last 2 years more these initiatives about collective intelligence and collective development groups. Okay, so putting people together to reflect on a specific subject, but not having resources all the time assigned to that. I can only describe that for me, one of the challenges that I've observed is about leadership. A shift in the paradigm or in the beliefs and the experiences with leadership. Let's say when there is a group of young, unexperienced people in leadership, when there is no leadership coming out, and when they don't know how to share the leadership in the group, it's a problem for the survival of the group. Mm. And when you have, let's say, leaders, big managers, maybe the C-suits that Neil was talking about, then you have big egos coming in, and that leadership is then a game of power of leadership instead of letting the emerging intelligence of the moment and the possibilities to create something. Mm-hmm. So leadership is a shift somewhere, but there are no rules yet. It needs to be experienced, I think.
Yes, I agree, and that's when you, as a coach, you kind of think about how can you leverage that dynamic in the benefit of the group,
right?
And use that in a way which can be a challenge for you as a practitioner. I'm just thinking the example you gave of the first one is how raise the self-awareness around the shared leadership in a group of young people, perhaps with not so much experience. So what is it that they need and how they can learn about themselves and realize and then grow into it. So by the end of the process, they would be in a different space. And equally, the group of CEOs that you mentioned in the beginning, and I was having a discussion with someone recently. She was talking about a research project, and then she was saying, well, depending on the energy and the leadership of the group, right, there might be, especially if people are perceive themselves as of high status, high level, would that be almost like competition, and that competition for the appearance of I'll be here and so on, would that then be detrimental to the work of the group, which is a more collaborative work where people can be vulnerable, they can share their challenges, their difficulties, and so on. And it's a very interesting, valid question. And I think what makes a very good, fully functioning group, and a fully functioning group is a group that has a sense of cohesiveness. So cohesiveness is something about, is the equivalent of psychological safety for teams in groups, because psychological safety is something that we use for teams mainly. And I think there is a role there for us to be able to contract and to start that work in a way that is conducive. It doesn't mean that's going to work every time, but there is work for us to do. Whereas I think about groups being very self-developing. We have some really important roles to play as coaches. That's when we come to life. That's how can we set up these things in a way that it works. And as I said, it might not work every time, but it's the same with dyadic, isn't it, or team? But it's a really good point. It is a challenge. How do you see that development of that? Because group coaching is very relational. So you really creating that relational space from different people, different backgrounds, to be able to collaborate in a way that is potentially different to what they've done before. So how do you see our role as coaches to develop that space for them?
I don't know about the space, but I've seen that there must be a minimum or a threshold of trust. And one of the things before creating any interactions, to create a space where the people can start building trust in one way or another, on an emotional subject, on a personal subject, or on anything. But they need first to connect and dare to trust.
Yes.
Without that, there is no engagement. There is no. I would start with openness and trust. And that cursor is very sensitive, depending, I would say, on the moment, on the here and now, and what is at stake for the group and for the individuals in the group. And sometimes opening the word by first understanding what is the intention, the motivation, or what is at stake. Understanding what is on the plate for each other is important.
Ali, you want to come in?
I just find because I do one-to-one and group coaching, with group coaching, really, I guess with both, it's our job to bring the process to the table, to manage the process around the outcomes we want. But yeah, I've just found with group coaching, because it's a more public, space to be talking, and just bringing a lot more structure in than we usually do in a conversation, like having some nice, simple but clear, structured approaches. So there's no surprises for anyone. So we don't have to rely on people's interpersonal skills as much. I just find myself focusing on process and letting the group bring the content, but being a really strong process facilitator in a group setting.
Yeah, there's more control if you use it. I work completely the opposite to you, Ali. I work with no structure.
Okay. And when you were describing group coaching, I was just thinking of the group therapy model, how we just arrive and we see what emerges and we follow almost this emerging conversation. And as a group rather than as individuals.
So there are different ways, but so it's really leveraging the group itself. And I think the safe space is important, and that's what we do well as coaches. We contract with our clients, and we ask them what they need. And there's something fascinating there you'll find if you work with people across different cultures. There's different ways of interacting in terms of openness and what people are willing to share or not to share. So there is, of course, we're all individuals and we have our own ways of being. And you also find cultural differences. And when we put those people together, it's fascinating because there is something about groups, and that comes from the kind of the theory as well, because the group is looking for an equilibrium. And groups do that. We do that. We're born in groups. We're not born alone. So we've been experiencing groups since we're born. And of course, we bring that experience to the group work that we do, whatever that might shape that might take. But we're always looking for that place of equilibrium. Humberto?
For me, the most difficult thing is the safe environment, because for more they say, they don't feel safe, unless the highest in the hierarchy open his heart and say something that shows vulnerability. Yeah. And then people will be confident. And I studied this from quite a bit of time. I began to study some years ago, not so many years, but some years ago. And I have a good facilitator in this program that I attended. And I studied this. And all the time I try to set this. The worst part was the safe environment, because one thing or other thing, they said, oh, I can't open myself. I can't say, I can't be completely honest. And if you are not completely honest, the group will not function as a group, as a team, or things like that. Yeah. Trust is one of the most important things, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it is. I agree with you. And that is one of the ingredients of psychological safety that we talk about in teams, and that sense of belonging. So the people's ability to, the three leadership characteristics for fostering psychological safety is the culture of learning, is fallibility, as I said, being vulnerable. Yes, I've made a mistake as a leader, and then follow my lead, because you can make a mistake too and it's okay. And that sense of curiosity about where we're heading. And if that is not available for people, then there is no sense of psychological safety or trust. And I think if people go and work in a group or a team and they are not able to display that, then what I'm thinking is how they're going back to their teams and organization, how they're going to foster that if they can't experience that themselves, or if they are not able to develop those. So and it's a developing thing, isn't it? I think it's still part of the learning for people. So just doing a recap, because there's different things we talked about. So we talked about organizations going into a hybrid environment where there are the three ingredients. So you've got the people, you've got the processes and the tools, and you've got the geography, the place where people are working, and thinking about bringing people together from the organization to develop this new work paradigm, and groups being potentially a good tool for that, because we know that groups help people foster, well-being, self-awareness, different perspectives, and bringing in these characteristics that we wouldn't have in a team, and you might not have in a one-to-one, or you have it in a different way. So it is how we help organizations to meet their needs by bringing in something different or something else that they're not doing it yet. So whereas it can get a group of people, a team behind closed doors to decide how they're going to work out this hybrid thing, where they're going to land, and by bringing people from across the organization, you do that in a different way. and there is a phrase that we use in the UK. It's actually used a lot by the lottery, which is not for profit. Well, they give money to not for profit causes, and they fund projects, and they have something they call test and learn. So they give organizations money to test and learn, which means if it doesn't work, it's okay. You've learned something. Now what we're going to do that's going to help, and I heard that phrase for the very first time outside that context, and it was someone from was on the radio talking about hybrid work, and they're saying, well, we don't know yet. It's a test and learn situation because we don't know the paradigm that we're creating. And I thought that was really interesting, because it's a language of uncertainty, which sometimes organizations avoid, to say, well, we don't really know, right? But we're being forced to acknowledge the language of uncertainty. So the test and learn really got stuck in my mind. And that's what I've been hearing from the people I've been working with, that they really are trying. And as I said, some organizations are not, they are dictating. And I suspect that there will be some impact on the back of that. Because we are in flux and engagement of employees. It's just so important for the culture of the organization. We know that the organizations are changing, and there is a focus on culture and engagement and shared goals that's been going on for at least 15 years, whereas the cultural performance that we use, the language of performance that we had before, that is evolving and changing. So we're talking about engaging, we're talking about shared understanding and values and meaning and all of that. So for organizations dictating the paradigm for the future, that will be an interesting thing to observe and see. Whereas the opposite is also quite dangerous, with organizations not getting anywhere because they're not making decisions, and they are just hoping that everyone will get to a nice consensus. And of course that won't happen. Well, the discussions I've seen my clients have is just like, well, half of the office wants to work on a Monday, the other half wants to work on a Tuesday, and then there is someone who never wants to go back to the office ever again. There is someone else who wants to be in the office every day because they don't like where they are, and how do we make this work, right? So, and that's the conversations that people are having, and there are no one solution that we can lovely present to people and say, oh, this is one I made earlier and it works perfectly well, because that will be very unique to their circumstances and the people they are serving, which is part of the fascination of it all, not knowing. And it also depends on the level of how people's perception of uncertainty and how they deal with uncertainty and change. And there has been a lot of it, right? So it's not like we've had our fair share. So for some people it is hitting a kind of a critical point. And from the perspective of well-being, there are some ingredients for well-being in the workplace that we know. Autonomy is one of them. So our ability to know that at least some of our work is we can control. Connections, so the sense of belonging and knowing that we can work with people well. That's a really important element of our well-being. And self-efficacy, that's one of the theories of well-being called self-determination theory. So knowing that I can do my job. So if I can do my job, if I connect and belong to my team, and I have a sense that I have some control over my working life, I will have a better sense of well-being. You start taking those things away from me, and that impacts my well-being. So if you think about the world of pandemic, where the control is taken away from us, it still is for some countries and some people, that we can't, it's completely beyond our control. So we need to hang on to what's left, that sense of connection, that sense of meaning, that reinforcement that we're doing a good job, a sense of achievement and all of that in the workplace that really is important for people's well-being. And well-being in the workplace, I think, is a great contender for groups as well, because just by being in groups, people feel better about themselves because they're interacting with people. There is a sense of positive emotions of working in groups as well. Shared narrative. They think like, oh, phew, it's just not me, not only me who is feeling this way. I'm so glad that there is someone else who feels exactly the same way. There are many, many positives for getting people together for some of the work. Any last questions or comments? What are you taking away from today, from this, not from today, from this last hour and a bit?
I think it's really seeing group coaching in other perspectives now, and really acknowledge more the benefits, the situations that it can be interesting really to work as in group coachings. I'm sorry, here it's late and I'm a little bit tired, but it was very, very interesting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Fatima. Thank you.
I'm in week 13 of lockdown, so I've really enjoyed speaking to people today. That's been great, just the group experience. I'm a solo lockdowner as well, so talking to myself. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Thank you, Ali.
Anna, I think it was quite great, great experience. We're looking at the challenges, but I think the opportunities far outweigh the challenges, and I think it's a good direction to dive in. Thanks for this excellent presentation. Really brilliant. Thanks again. Yes.
Thank you, Anna. For me, it's like this opportunity of value group coaching, and I know that we can help our clients to accept the uncertainty and be open to that through deeper reflection in group coaching. So thank you very much.
Thank you
for your role.
Yeah, I think I'm taking away some practical things, a little bit of help from my friends. So thank you, Ali, and thank you, Anna, for suggestions and for help with that. And I'm feeling pumped for Saturday.
And thank you for your help, right?
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Walking me through the slides.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Well, thank you very much for this session. It was quite interesting, and it allowed for different perspectives on group coaching, and that just might come very helpful and handy. Thank you. And thank you very much for my breakout room colleagues for such a lovely talk and enlightening.
I'm going away with, I wouldn't say more questions, but I am still with the deep reflection on how to accompany the best we can in collective intelligence, this change of paradigm. I think we have seen only the beginning in our VUCA world, and comes also to my mind that something we haven't talked about, but it's about courage. And I think that group coaching might be one of the leverage to go through change of paradigms. Very interesting. Thank you for all your inputs and to all.
Thank you.
Well, from my side, please.
My friend Neil said that I sent the compliments to the wrong group. But so I'd like to say thank you very much for all of you and people I haven't seen from a little bit time. And it was a pleasure to meet you. And one thing, 5 from Portugal chapter here in this session. It's a great number.
Yeah.
5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6. 6
I'm moving to Portugal. I'm coming. I found my crowd there.
But I'm still in Brazil. I'm still in Brazil, but I'm connected with the MCC Portugal for sentimental reasons.
Me too. I am in chapter in Portugal.
Well, from my side, I also thank you for the opportunity to reflect in a more structured way based on your sharing, and I have reinforced this idea that group coaching can elicit the collective intelligence of an organization, and I thank you for having shared your conclusions and your research. So gives credibility to these conclusions. So thank you.
Thank you. That's what that's exactly what I'm trying to do, to do more and more research into group coaching as I go. Because I think we need to work on on the body of evidence and do evidence-based practice and develop that. There is a lot more to develop. Sarah, do you want to say something? You came on camera, so I don't.
Yes. No, thank you so much. I love the discussion and your research. I would like to read a little bit more about your research, because in these times, it is very helpful for us. Thank you so much for the section, and for my colleagues in breakout room too. Thank you.
Thank you. Please do get in touch. I can send you my research, the research papers, and if there is any topic that you're interested in, let me know, because I finished my doctorate last year, so I read everything there was to know about group coaching. So if there is any specific things that you have in mind that you'd like to know more, please do let me know. You find me on LinkedIn, link with me, and I can send you my research and any materials that you may want to go and further investigate a little bit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Well, it's been a pleasure to meet you all. Best of luck, Neil, on Saturday. I'll be rooting for you to have a great session with the teachers, and it's been a pleasure to see you all here. And yes, enjoy the rest of the week, and thank you so much. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.